Hello everyone. I'm going to rank my courses from last year and this year because I'm really bored and I have nothing better to do. So I have two tables set up right here. I have one table set up ranking the courses in terms of the amount of time I spent, and then the other one is the amount of value I obtained from that course. So this is going to be very fun. Okay, so for the categories, in time sunk, we have number one, which is you're not sleeping tonight, because if you choose this course, you will not be sleeping some nights. And then there's the second option, which is a ton of work to do. Self-explanatory. You need to spend some effort, and then there's relatively light workload. And then at the very bottom, there's the free 7 course where you can take it and get a free 7. I don't think any of these classes will fit into that category, but we will see. Okay. Let's begin with social studies. I took Asia and the World. This class has a ton of work to do. Actually, in ninth grade, it's not that bad, especially near the beginning of the year. But since you have to write a lot of essays, and then make presentations and make infographics, and the fact that you have to do research and then cite your sources, and then just scroll through like Wikipedia for like a ton of hours, I'd say it's quite a lot of work to do in comparison to some of the other classes. Now, in 10th grade, it doesn't get better. You're definitely not sleeping. This class is going to take up 80% of your time. It sucks, but it is kind of fun. I like the class. It's just that there's a lot of work to do. And it's also not that difficult. The only thing I dislike about Asia and the World, mostly it's just the amount of work. Everything else about it is actually pretty fine. The stuff you learn is interesting. The content and like the research part is just fun. I just wish there weren't as many deadlines and assignments. You have like a formative every other week, and then a summative all stuff together near the end of a quarter, and it's just really unpleasant time. So yeah, if you choose Asian the World, you're not sleeping, but I think that just goes for all social studies classes. I don't think CASE, civics and social entrepreneurship, is much better. Okay, English 9. I'd say English is probably either light workload or spend some effort. I'm gonna say usually it's light workload, but when there are assignments, I'd say you need to spend some effort. But for me, I think English 9 was a relatively light workload. I don't think I tried very hard in that class. It's not that I didn't try very hard, it's just that there aren't as many assignments to do outside of class. It's just the occasional essay. So, it's alright. English 10, same thing. I think a lot of the stuff you do can just like, you can do it in an afternoon, like preparing for a Socratic seminar. You just have notes and then you just talk. Or like some presentations, you might just like make a PPT, present it. For me at least, it was relatively straightforward. I'd say it's in between these two. Depends on what assignments you have. Actually, I'll move it up now that I think about it. Because looking at some of the other classes, there's probably easier ones. Okay, Film 1. Film 1 honestly is a free 7. There's some work, like you have to do stuff, but in general, I'm pretty sure I wasted a lot of time in that class. It's a pretty fun class. I think the most work you have to do is like writing the script or documenting some of the choices you made and just like putting together all of your works. But in terms of the actual sitting down writing for hours, that doesn't really exist. So I'd say it's a free 7. Film 2, a little bit more work. I'd say Film 2 is relatively light workload. Because although it's not as easy as free 7 course, it's still pretty easy. There's definitely more documentation that you have to do. So Film 2 is a little bit higher than Film 1. Okay, the next course is Intro to Programming. Honestly, for this one, you're gonna have to spend some effort, even though it's introductory class. There's just a lot of dumb stuff you have to do. Like, the teacher is gonna assign you a lot of really easy projects. It's like, oh, draw a square, draw a circle, write your name out using the pen on like a Python script or something. Well, you're gonna start off with block-based, but it's just really annoying. You have to take a screenshot of like every other thing you do, and then you always have to make a flow chart. It's not fun. Some people think, oh, it's an introductory class, it's gonna be easy. Yeah, it's a bit too easy to the point where it gets a little bit obnoxious. So you gotta spend some effort. Not to mention that some of the projects I genuinely have to spend time after school working on them and like polishing them up. And when it comes to programming, like time can be lost really really quickly just like figuring out bugs, trying to debug stuff, adding new features. You can get carried away. So I'd say it's need to spend some effort, but it's a little bit less than classes like English. Okay. The next class is Math 9 Advanced. I think this one is need to spend some effort because Mr. Ho is pretty harsh. He's not harsh. I like him as a teacher. He's a great teacher. But he covers a lot of stuff, and the content is pretty fast. So you'll need to spend some effort. And in terms of like actually staying up and studying or anything, that doesn't really happen. But you will have to review a lot and do studying on your own if you want to catch up. But honestly, like just routine working on math is enough. There's no big assignments. It's just like stressing over a test. So math is relatively easy. Next one is Math 10 Advanced. Honestly, I think Math 10 Advanced is easier than 9 Advanced in terms of the work you have to do. But it's kind of in a similar boat with 9 Advanced. It's like, in terms of big projects, not really anything, but you'll have to do studying on your own. Okay, 9th grade PE. This is probably either a free 7 or a relatively light workload class. I'll put it in relatively light workload because I think free 7 makes it sound like way too easy. There's you have to do a lot of other like not projects, but like there's a lot of assessments. You're being tested on your movement competency, and then there's like tests and stuff, and there's also outside of class stuff. But in terms of actual content, I'd say it's relatively light. And most of the assignments are done at school during class, so you really don't need to spend much time outside of school. So P9, relatively light workload. Okay. Next class is Music Studio Production. I don't even have to think. This one's a free 7 for me. I did have to spend some time after school. Like I stayed after school for one day to finish my project before the first like summative project, I guess. And then I did have to stay after school for one class for the final. But that's because I did it out of passion and I wanted to make my project good. You really don't have to. And there's like one test, and then the teacher pretty much gives you all the answers, and like you barely have to study at all. Like the hardest question is like, this is a sine wave, this is a square wave, this is a triangle wave, and this is a sawtooth wave. They make funny synthesizer sounds. So free 7 course, no doubt about that. Okay, next class is Science and Engineering. I think for 9th grade, it was okay. I think it's need to spend some effort. In terms of science, you actually have to like do a bit of studying on your own. I think it's in a similar boat with 9 Advanced. I think it's a little harder than 9 Advanced. The engineering in 9th grade is pretty much no effort except for the documentation. So I think this class, yeah, you'll need to spend some effort. Oh shoot, I forgot about PE 10. Yeah, PE 10's in a similar boat as 9th grade, but I think 10th grade PE is actually harder because there's a lot more written assignments for some reason. Like right now we're discussing like healthy relationships and contraceptives and stuff, and you kind of have to like do long projects. The nutrition summative, you have to like write, like you're gonna spend some effort. Uh, Honestly, with this type of framing, and later I might actually have to move some of these classes upwards. I think I'll move. Mm, uh, you know what, I'll leave it like this, but I think I'll make some adjustments later. Okay, science and engineering 10. I think it's there's quite a bit of work to do. In terms of science, like you're gonna actually have to study like the biology stuff, memorize it. Chemistry, like I actually had to like spend some time on my own to understand the content very well. And in terms of the engineering, I spent a lot of days after school. Some of it comes down to luck because for engineering, you're always like in group projects. So if your group is like really efficient and you have like a good idea, you're not gonna suffer that much. But if you have an inefficient team and you're kind of lost, you're gonna have to spend a lot of time after school, which makes this class not as easy. Now that I think about it, I'm probably gonna move English 9 up to a ton of work to do. And I think I'll move the math advance up, and I'll move both the math advances up because I want to balance out the other classes. I feel like relatively light workload was a bit too nice on some of these classes, but for a math class it was relatively easy. Okay, Spanish beginning. This one's definitely relatively light. Stuff you learn, it's pretty easy. You'll go over like simple conjugations. Honestly, not that difficult. It does get harder later on. To be honest. Besides that, like most of the vocabulary is simple. Yeah, you'll be okay. Alright. Next class is Spanish Intermediate. This one you actually have to try. This one's kind of hard. Honestly, yeah, I don't know what to say. I'd say if you actually want to spend effort on this class, it would be a lot easier. But if you're like me and you don't like learning languages, then you're actually gonna struggle a little bit. I think currently this would be like much higher than some of the other classes. Like I'd say Spanish Intermediate's harder than English and my math class right now. Yeah, in general, the 9th grade classes are easier than the 10th grade classes, but there are exceptions. Like in my opinion, English 9 and Math 9 were both harder than 10 for some reason. Asia in the world is always the king of no sleep. Okay. I think I'll leave this as it is for now. I'm gonna move to my tier list on overall value. Which course did I learn the most from? Okay, let's start with Asia in the World 1. I'd say that since this one was like an introductory course, like it's the first social studies course you do, you get exposed to a lot of the different types of stuff that will be tested in IB. So I'd say I learned quite a lot. This one was definitely worth taking. And for Asia in the World 2, I'd say less so. You're kind of doing a similar stuff, but it's just more work and then more in depth. I think Asia in the World actually exposes you to more variety. For example, you would do presentations. You would have to use Sway. You could make infographics. You would write essays. All sorts of stuff. Whereas in Asia in the World 2, it's primarily been essay writing. So I guess there's more value in Asian World 2 in terms of writing a good and solid essay, but in terms of being prepared for like all the different text types for IB and stuff, Asian World 1 was better. English 9, to be honest, I don't think. Actually, I learned a little. I think English 9, you learn quite a bit about like writing a good essay, and I think that's important. Besides that, the books we learn, the Socratic seminars, that's mostly like carried through middle school, so don't really learn much from that. English 10, however, I think is much better. I think I learned quite a lot from it. The reason is because English 10 actually drilled down a lot of these more difficult types of texts. For example, like the poetry stuff, learning how to analyze that, and also the like Shakespearean texts and reading an Old English. I think that makes English 10 much more valuable as a course. Definitely learn more. Okay. Film 1. Film 1 I learned, honestly, I learned quite a lot in terms of film. But in terms of other stuff, yeah, I'll put it in learn quite a lot. It was worth taking. Because for someone with not much experience into film, you get to know how to use the cameras, you get to see the how to use like the f-stop or ISO, adjusting frame rate settings, color balancing, all that type of stuff. It's pretty useful. And also the different types of shots, like medium shot, wide shot, establishing shot, close-up shot, stuff like that. And film technique, it's pretty useful if you're interested in film. Whereas for film 2, it's kind of just expanding on that. You aren't really doing much new stuff, so I'm gonna say film 2, you don't learn much. The film 1 is actually pretty nice, because it's like the basics of a lot of stuff. You go on Celtics, you learn about script writing, you know about the general format of a film, you basically dabble in everything, whereas film 2 is kind of like repeating that, but just like with different projects. Okay, intro to programming was a waste of time. I didn't learn anything new in that class. I don't know, like, since it's an intro class, the only thing I learned was like a little bit of Python, I guess, but as if I still remember that, that's a different story. Also, even then, I was already familiar with a little bit of Python, and most of the course is taught in block-based coding anyways. So in terms of progression, I think it was better at teaching you the flow charts and the thinking behind coding, but in terms of like actually learning how to code, I think it was a waste of time. The projects you do are also not that interesting, and yeah. Okay, Math 9 Advanced, extremely valuable course, definitely worth taking, because you learn so much in this class. Even though it's fast paced, and even though you will have to spend a lot of time, it covers so much stuff that going into Math 10 Advanced, we're basically relearning half the stuff from 9 Advanced. And I think once I get into the IB math curriculum, it's gonna be the same type of feeling. I think 9 Advanced definitely prepared me for the harder math content. It was definitely worth taking. Even if it wasn't necessarily the easiest class or the class with the best grades, it's definitely the most valuable in terms of the stuff you actually learn. I think I learned the most from this class in 9th grade, so it's going into extremely valuable. 10 Advanced, not so much as 9 Advanced, to be honest, because you're just expanding on that knowledge from 9th grade. I think 9 Advanced really prepares you for that, like, formatting and the pacing of math in the future high school courses, whereas 10 Advanced is just a little bit more stuff you learn. So I think 10 Advanced will go into learn a little, or maybe learn. I wouldn't say I learned anything like revolutionary that changed my perspective on math or anything like that. So I'll say I learned a little. Music studio production, I'd say some stuff was a little bit of a waste of time, but for other stuff I learned quite a lot. So I'm gonna put this class and learn quite a lot, and it was worth taking because learning how to use those plugins, knowing more about like the general structure and the process behind like producing music, pretty fun. And this course kind of teaches you how to go more in depth. You're not just making a song on like GarageBand that sounds really really bad. You're trying to move it to the next level, make it sound a little bit more professional. You learn more about synthesizers, and how to mix correctly. So I learned quite a lot. PE, I didn't learn much. PE 10, I didn't learn much. Okay, science and engineering. Okay, actually though, for PE, I think PE 10 you learn a little bit more than PE 9. I'd say the actual stuff that's important is like the tips they give you for like nutrition or sexual relationships. That stuff is actually kind of useful. But in terms of the actual like physical movement gameplay type thing, it's like when you play invasion games, it's move into open space. When you play netwall games, it's serve into open space, pass to open space. That's pretty much like the entire theory. Pass to whoever is open. So yeah, like if you know that, you're gonna be fine. You don't really learn much in that class, but I wouldn't say it was a waste of time. Okay, science and engineering. 9. I don't think I learned too much. I'd say I learned a little. This class is one of those classes where it's like, if you make your project incorporate a lot of the stuff in the Fab Lab, you'll learn a lot more. And I think when I was in 9th grade, a lot of the stuff that we didn't really use that. So I actually didn't get to use like the cool machines, the big saws, and all that fun stuff. Whereas for 10th grade, science and engineering, I got more of that hands-on experience, and you get more familiar with the entire design process. I think science and engineering 9 is more of like a trial run that gets you into science and engineering 10. And in terms of like the actual science aspect, because I was talking about engineering a lot, you don't learn much science in science 9. Like, I don't remember anything from that class. I think science 10 just teaches you more. And you relearn a lot of the old stuff too. Spanish beginning. I think I learned a little in this class. Because actually, it's either between didn't learn much or learn a little. I'd say I learned a little because it kind of got me off the ground for Spanish, but it didn't prepare me enough for Spanish intermediate, and that is my main problem with it. I feel like they don't teach deep enough and they don't teach fast enough, and I think it's really easy to start falling behind once you go into a harder class like Spanish intermediate. This one, honestly, I don't think I've learned much. I think this is worse than Spanish beginning, because once you hit that roadblock, it's harder to progress later on. So that's about it for my overall value tier list, but I'm gonna double check to see if there's anything I might move up. I think maybe actually English and Asia both taught me a lot about essay writing, which are very important. But I think it was a combination of these courses that makes it valuable. I don't think one course on its own deserves the highest spot that Math 9 Advanced has. But now that I think about it, I might move film one up potentially, or I mean I learned quite a lot. I don't think it was super valuable. I think I'll leave it as it is right now. So now let's compare the time sunk with the overall value, and we could probably plot this onto like a graph. Alright, I'm gonna cut to that. I'll do that in a bit.